things happening behind the scenes. So I'll be flying blind.
Well, I'm back now. Holy smokes. That was
you're
crazy. That was
you're
crazy.
you're
I
the
don't know
man behind the
if
curtain.
I hope we get the audience back here. Right now, it's you and I talking, but we'll prepare as we go along. We are getting an audience back. So, hey, thank you for helping us deal with the problem. Please let us know. Let us know if you're still there, and let us know we're on a different platform right now, but that's okay. And we'd love to see your comments and your just feel free to give us a chat. I've got it up right now so I can see what's going on. Junie, thanks so much for popping back on, and let's see who else can see if we get an audience back at all. So
That'll be the goal. If we
yeah,
talk if we talk about the right things, we'll grab the right audience.
what I need to know on this new platform is, can I? Yeah, there we go. Now I can look at you. I can talk to you. I got it set up right. Okay. Are we ready to talk hockey now?
Let's do it.
All right. Where were we going to start at again?
So since we've already kind of previewed some of the other junior leagues, one of the leagues we haven't talked about as far as like who do we think is going to make the playoffs, who's going to come out of each division has been the North American League. We've done the USHL, we've done the NCDC, the NA3, we've done the EHL. So let's talk about the North American League first. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of go around some of the other leagues after we've already talked about them and just see where things are.
That sounds good. Now, if I remember on this platform, you can do a. Can you do a picture in picture, or you want me to do it?
Why don't you drive?
Okay. Okay. There we go. This should be. There we go. Look at that. It's even more
Wow,
professional looking. So
that is
it's
fantastic.
one step back for us, and then hopefully two steps forward. Right.
Yeah, and the best part is it put you and I guess me in a much smaller box, so we don't have to necessarily see each other anymore.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So this is the null, and
This is the null. Yes, Jeff. Correct.
look, I'm shaking, man. I got shaken up a little bit.
You're still in vacation mode. I get it. I get it. I can take over here.
You
Um,
need to tonight, man, because I'm telling you what, it's a rough start. Go ahead.
all right. So we can see here just, and if you want to expand it, I don't know how small this looks for the people that are viewing, but, looking at each of the different divisions, uh, what
So,
happens
how many divisions are there in that league?
in where the NA,
Yeah.
there's four.
Okay. So we're starting at the
So
top. This the central. Then you want to start with?
yeah, let's start with the Central. For people who aren't aware, the top four teams in each division are going to play each other, one versus four, two versus three, and then as they continue from round one to round two, they're trying to advance out of their division first. So you want to win your division, then you move on for, the Robertson Cup, and that's where you're really going to get that high level competition. It's usually at a neutral site. Um, it'll rotate around. Blaine, obviously is a spot that it's held periodically. Um, so when we're looking here at the Central Division, we have talked about the Austin Bruins before. They were pretty much number one in this division throughout the whole season. They never really were contested in any way, but some of the other teams kind of have moved around a little bit here. So again, looking at 1 through 4, you got Austin, you got St. Cloud, who's actually made a run here as of late. Maybe the last 2 months, they've really crept up the standings, North Iowa, and then Aberdeen. If we went back to the podcast, we were talking about this division in the past. I think it was probably 2 months ago at this point. It was Austin, Minot, Bismarck was up there, Aberdeen was up there, and now you can see things have kind of shuffled around. So Austin's still going to be the team to beat. They're loaded. They've got really good forwards. They put up pretty good offense for the league overall, and they also don't give up a whole lot of goals. They got good goaltending, but they also have really good defensemen and play good team defense. So when you look at how this is really going to play out throughout this division, I still think it's going to be tough for any of these teams to beat Austin in a series. I don't know. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, there's a few numbers that point out to me. I've watched Austin play a couple times live. They're good. They're a good team. Live meaning I've watched them on hockey TV, not in the building. Although I do think I saw them in Blaine.
Yeah, we saw him in Blaine.
Yeah. So I didn't see them as dominant in Blaine as they are now, but I'm looking at a couple of things. I'm looking at that goals against differential, and they're easily 25 goals differential better as far as goals against than the next team. That when I say that, you look at the differential number, 42 plus, and there's nobody else except for Bismarck who's in last place that's a plus. That's goals for versus goals against. And so they're a plus 42, but their goals against, the next best team, they're got 123 against, and then St. Cloud's got 148. That's a dominant defense right there. That's goaltending. And what I like about them is they're a little nasty. You look at that penalty minutes, you go over that penalty minute column, and they're the only team in the 1,000 penalty minutes as a team in that division. Not to say that that's a good or bad thing, but it just means that you're usually a little bit more aggressive in the corners. That's usually where penalties are taken, and it's usually that first impact in the corner or coming in to clean up your man. And I like that. I like that a lot. The last 10 games, they're only 6-4.
Yeah.
You got to watch out for North Iowa coming up at 8-2. Their last 10 games. That's a hot team, and that looks like who they're going to match up with. And we know that North Iowa team, that's the old Amarillo team, and that's Amarillo from a season or two ago, and they moved up to North Iowa. That's a good franchise, and so now that they're hot, I think it's going to be a good series. I honestly think that's going to be a fun series to watch. I still think you're right. I think Austin takes it, but man, oh man, that's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and shout out to one of my boys, Ryan Thomas, was traded to St. Cloud, which has kind of helped their little. I guess they shuffled the deck a little bit there and made some moves, but it's also kind of galvanized the team a little bit. And even though they're past 10, they're 5-3-1-1. Their team is playing much better hockey. I'm not saying it's because of him, but he has definitely contributed to some of the other moves that they made to kind of steadying that lineup. And they're playing really good hockey. So and then again, you got Aberdeen. And right now, if Austin and Aberdeen match up against each other, I know they're obviously tied with North Iowa. So we'll see who actually gets that fourth spot. But you got Langer as the coach of Aberdeen, who's had the most wins and currently the most wins of any team in the NA. So you're going to have to play against a coach that's been around and knows how to get the most out of his team and whatnot. So it's not going to be an easy series by any means. But when you look at the actual horses on the team, they're deep. They're really deep. So they're going to be really tough to beat.
That comment that came up that Junie threw up, he says the Bruins might be the best team in the league. Interesting.
He might be right.
You might be right, but I want to see the rest of your breakdown here before I start making an assessment like that. That's a bold statement in my mind.
Well, to Junie's credit, they have been number one in this division pretty much from the beginning of the year till now. So I don't think anyone's really challenged them much.
All right, let's move on to the East. What do you see there?
Yeah, so the East, again, Maryland has kind of been at the top of the standings throughout most of this season too for this division. So, they're far and away been the more successful team between the rest of the group here. And you got Danbury and Philadelphia, two of the expansion teams here that, they're I don't want to say they're easy wins because Philadelphia definitely isn't, but Danbury is. So some of these teams are getting rich off of, one of the bottom teams in their division. But when the heavy hitters play each other, it's pretty close as far as like the talent level amongst like Maryland, New Jersey, Maine, Northeast, and even Johnstown. Like those games aren't blowouts. It's not like the haves and the have-nots necessarily in this division. So I still think, Maine's they've been doing well lately. Again, some of these teams that are a little bit younger are starting to find their way. And some of the teams like Maryland has a little bit of an older team, which is why they have gone almost wire to wire as the top team. I still think when those guys, put the pedal down, they're going to be better than say Maine or even Northeast, who, They've got a good team, but some of their better players might be a little bit younger. It's tough for those guys in the playoffs to really shine or to show through. And if they can, that's great. But when you look at Maryland's roster, they score goals. They're one of the highest offensive teams. And again, they get good goaltending and they got really good team defense, some good structure, and they're hard to play against. So, I hate when we have to pick the top team in each division to kind of go all the way through. There's always upsets, but it's like I don't really see Maryland getting beat in a series against any of these teams. I see a few of them giving them some really good games, but I just see them going all the way through and advancing out.
Mike, you couldn't be more wrong.
Oh, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Who is the returning national champion?
The Titans.
The Titans. Okay. You bring the Titans into the mix. They've got veteran players that have been there. And that makes a big, big difference on just preparing the younger guys on that roster. I'm not saying, even last year, I think the Titans got hot at the right moment. I don't think they were the best team, in the whole league last year, but they got hot at the right time and they beat teams they needed to beat, and they did it. And all credit to them. This year, though, I still don't think they're the best team in the league. It's just by record, they're probably not even a top 6, top 8 team, and we'll look at that in a second. But you bring in that veteran experience, they're not that far off. They're only 7 points out of first place, and they got 2 games in hand on that first place team, which is Maryland. So 2 games in hand, if you add that 4 points into that and say they pick up the 4 points, which they could, okay, now, it's only a couple point difference between first and second place.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this saying, I think we've got a bloodbath. Those 2 teams move out of their first round. And I think that's going to be a great series for that second round to move on to the Blaine, Final Four. So,
see, I think if there's a sleeper in the group, for me, it's Maine. I think they're the sleeper in the group.
Maybe, but you're wrong. They're 8-2. They're hot right now, but I'd have to go back and look at those, that 8-2 record and see if that's actually playing Philadelphia, 4 times and playing Danbury 4 times, and then playing Maryland 2 times. So they go 8-0 against Philly and Danbury. I don't know. That's too much work right now, but you can see that there's a possibility, but I think this is going to be the most competitive division of games. I think this is where you're going to see the most the tightest games, and I think the series go out and they'll play out all the way through. So
yeah, and you can see the separation here between the playoff teams and the not. It's not to say that Philly's a pushover because they're still almost a 500 team, but there's definitely Danbury, unfortunately, at the bottom there. That that takes a lot for that team to beat somebody just because their roster doesn't stack up with the rest of, at least currently, the North American League teams. So
I heard you say Maryland and maybe Maine. Okay.
Well, you're picking New Jersey. Maine, I think they could make a run.
All right, let's go back to the next division here.
So now we're moving into the Midwest. We got the Wisconsin Wendigos, number 1, which honestly, I hadn't been looking at the standings in a while. I didn't realize that they've gone on such a winning streak and kind of moved themselves up the standings. So when I first started looking, I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they were doing so well. I actually bumped into one of the owners this past weekend and talked to him a little bit. I wish I had looked at the standings before I was in a conversation with him, but they're off to a heck of a finish here to end the regular season. The Minnesota Wilderness.
They're owned by some people out of LA, right? Out of California.
This guy that I talked to was from Wisconsin. He's from the area. His kids were playing for the Madison Capitals, U18. So I saw him there. He introduced himself and we talked a little bit, but that's irrelevant to the conversation. In this division, you can see there between the Wilderness and Wisconsin, they're close in the standings. I still don't know if this is the way it's going to finish. I expect the Wilderness to to end up back in first. That's just my opinion. And then, there's still going to be a battle here towards the end of the year on who's in the playoffs, because when you look at Fairbanks at number 3 with 58 points, and then you even go down to Janesville at 7 with 53, they're still probably about, depending on the team, 10, 11 games still to play here. This could shuffle a little bit, as we get a little bit closer. So it's hard to pick maybe who the other teams are that are going to end up making it, because it might not be the ones that are currently set at 3 and 4. But regardless, I still think that for me, the Wilderness is my pick to advance out, just because there's quite a few players on that team that have very high level talent. Some of them are, some of them are O2s, which is great. That'll give them a little bit of bump. But some of the younger guys on that roster are very skilled, can make really good plays, and I think are, a high potential of offense that they can play. The question is can they, play with physicality and some of the other things that are going to come with the playoffs? That still remains to be seen. But I'm interested to see how this division actually wraps up when the season ends.
You should be, because once again, Mike, you're wrong. And I'll explain why. Here's what I see. My pick in this division right now is sitting in number 5. I think Chippewa is going to continue to stay hot. They have a good defense, and look at their plus minus, look at their differential. The two teams in front of them are upside down on goals for and goals against. And they both have, Fairbanks is 3-5-2 in the last 10 games. Kenai's not doing bad, but I think that there's a lot of pretenders in this division. I'm not going to call out who the pretenders are, but I think it makes the top 2-3 teams look bad. Chippewa is going to be healthy. I think Chippewa comes in. They're a disciplined team, low in penalty minutes against them. They're good defensive. You can put them defensively up against their goals against average. You can put them up against just about anybody in the league, and they're going to be a top 10 team. I'm picking Chippewa to make a run at this. Do they make it all the way and make it to Blaine? I don't know, but I think they get in the playoffs, and I think they make a run. How's that for stepping outside the boundaries?
Well, I mean, it all depends on, does Chippewa have their goaltender, or is he playing in the USHL? Because
don't worry about that. They're good. They're good defensively with whoever they got in net.
I mean, you're talking about a complete difference maker, though. If
of course,
Gagin's in the net. I think he's still with Green Bay right now.
Okay, so. And they're 7-3 since he's been in Green Bay.
No. He's been up and down recently. You're not following. He's been up and down.
I'm not backing off. I see Chippewa as a legitimate player in this. They've got 3 games in hand on the 2 teams in front of them. 3 games in hand is 6 points. That gives them a potential of 60 points to stay even with those guys, and that puts them in 3rd place if they catch up on those games they got in hand. I think they're in a really good spot.
And again, if he's down playing for them, he's a complete difference maker. He could not only help them get into the playoffs, but he could be the difference of why they're the team that actually is advancing out, and they're doing it from the last spot.
Let me tell you a little story. A couple years ago, and we should go to a little bit more dramatic, that's not even good enough. We need to go dramatic. How do I get that thing off? Oh my goodness. Just take that off. Can't get dramatic when I can't run the equipment.
Doesn't being dramatic help with music?
I don't have music.
That's what you need.
So I just wanted to get closer to that camera so you can see the face here. Okay. What were we talking about? It's a scary
movie.
What were we talking about?
The goaltending. You probably got
a great story
that had a good goaltender.
Situation. Look, Shreveport, 2 years ago, national champion, right? 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever.
Yep.
They had a NHL level goalie on that team. Do you remember that?
I do.
Did he even play in the playoffs?
No.
The other kid got hot, made a run, boom. He was the best goalie in the league, and he didn't even play in the playoffs because the other goalie got hot. Right now, 7-3. I don't care if he's in or out. That team has got goaltending good enough to make a run at this.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay, I gave you a chance to back off your bold statements and go with the winner, but you can go anywhere you want. Okay, last division, the South. What do you got?
Oh, the dirty South. You going to throw the standings back up for everyone?
Yeah, I thought I did, but I didn't. Right there.
All right, so we're looking at the South Division here. Some of the teams that consistently are up there for winning a Robertson Cup each season. Oklahoma has been the best team in the league throughout this season. Lone Star is always a top program. Shreveport, like you mentioned, they won it 2 years ago in New Mexico. Phil Fox is a great coach. They were in the championship last year and just weren't able to win it. Every year, a team is going to come out of the South Division is going to make a legit run at being the champion. So, as you look at how this kind of splices down, it's going to be very difficult for any team to beat Oklahoma because not only do they play very good defense as a team and have good goaltending, and actually one of their best goalies is playing in the USHL now, and they haven't skipped a beat. And their offense is, especially for the South Division, which is not necessarily known for offense because of how tight it is.
Hang on a second. You're not getting away with that easy. Did you just make the statement that they're going to still be great even though their goalie's up in the USHL? You just said that, right?
Yes.
But you wouldn't let that happen in the other division. You argued against that.
I know. You like how that works?
Oh boy. You got to get into politics. You got to get into politics. Hey, you're in Chicago. You could be mayor there right now. They're looking for a mayor.
Well, I don't know if we got any good contestants to take over what we had, but that's a whole different podcast.
Look, you're right. Oklahoma, even though they just took over that first place spot maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, Lone Star was battling with them. Lone Star battled with injuries, and here's the difference. Lone Star wins 3-2. They win 2-1. They win in overtime games. Oklahoma they're not twice as high, but they're about 80 goals difference in the amount of goals that they have this year versus Lone Star. They can score. They can put pucks in the net. I think these two teams match up in the division finals, and it's going to be a tough road for Lone Star. Oklahoma is got a lot going on for itself. These teams are equal in many ways, except for that extra goal scoring punch, and I don't think that's a secret to anybody. The team that's well, first of all, those top four teams, it looks like they're going to make it. Oklahoma, Lone Star, Shreveport, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Those are the teams that are moving on. I look at this though and say we are going to have a classic Shreveport Lone Star battle. That two plays three, and the hottest team for the last third of the season has been Shreveport. If we remember the beginning of the season, Shreveport was down in the bottom of the league. They didn't have anything working for them, and it looked like it was going to be a real off season for Shreveport. And they've just continually just banged up the standings to the point where they're a solid third place team, and they're still not out of second place yet. So I look forward, of all series this year, I look forward to that Lone Star Shreveport series. I think that is going to be hey, look, we've got a whole video where we talked to Dan, Wildfung, about that series and about what it means for those two teams to play each other. That's a video you can get off of Junior Hockey Advisor. The discussion page, you can sort through there, but you can definitely go to YouTube, Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube, and pull that up. That's a fantastic, he talks about why it is what it is there. So I look forward to that. I don't discount what New Mexico can do, because we've seen New Mexico go up against teams on paper that are much better than them, and we watch them play them tough. And the biggest thing is, and this is what I don't get, Mike, I don't understand it. You see teams, this is dramatic again, so we got to go dramatic. You see teams, they go in and play New Mexico, and they don't get there a day or two early. They get there the night before. It's insane that they're playing at the same altitude as Denver. Okay, you can't go in there and expect to play well in any sport in Denver in the pro levels because it's altitude difference. You're mile high. If you're going to be tough in this series, whoever it is, if it's going to be Lone Star, if it's going to be Shreveport or Oklahoma, and right now it looks like the matchup is Oklahoma against New Mexico. I'm not telling Oklahoma that because, we've got an affiliation with another team, so we'll keep this secret amongst ourselves. But the rest of those teams, they need to get there early. They need to get that blood oxygen right so they can compete. Because to be honest with you, I've watched teams after teams go into there. I've been in that New Mexico rink for probably 10 games. And first of all, it's a small barn with a very tightly packed crowd. And they've got boots on ground, ownership on ground that cares. It's a great atmosphere, but the difference being that altitude. That's an edge that nobody else has, and they got to take care of it until next year because we've got a Colorado team coming in. I didn't look to see what their rink elevation is yet. Have you looked at that?
I haven't.
That's something for us to do. We'll talk about that at some point. So I'm saying New Mexico is going to be tough in every single round. If they get through the first one, they're going to be tough there against Oklahoma. They're going to be tough if they get to the second round too. I don't see them moving on though. My money right now is I'm not going to say because I want to keep my job.
Well, I think again, when we talk about that division in particular, because of how it's played, whoever moves on, it could be New Mexico moving on from the being the fourth seed. They're still going to make a run against all the other divisions when they finally start playing against each other, because it's just it's a division that all the different teams and the coaches, they stress defense, they stress structure. There's no space out there, and there's still good players, like offensive players, that are learning how to create their own opportunities, through structure, through not having any space. But then there's other divisions that are a little bit more wide open, a little bit more free flowing. And then now, as they all kind of crash together, can some of those higher octane, like the Austins, like the Marylands, if they make it, or, some of the other teams we've talked about, the Chippewas, if you will, can they consistently through a series play with high offense when there's no space? And that's where, things start changing and whatnot. So like it's, I don't necessarily want to pick a winner in this, but it's going to be very difficult to beat Oklahoma.
It's going to be difficult to beat them. They're the number one overall team in the league. I just pulled up ranking these teams by the entire league versus by division. And I did this because it's kind of interesting to see. In the top 6, 3 of them are from the South. Right. Oklahoma, Lone Star, Shreveport. They're the only division that has multiple members except Austin. No, that's right, isn't it? That's the only one that's got out of the top 6 there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because Wisconsin's the top of their division, Austin's the top of their division, and Maryland's the top of their division.
Yep. So you got 3 teams in the top 6 from that South. And it's not because that South is weak. It's just the opposite. That South is extremely tough, with the exception of one team. Corpus Christi's struggling this year, but they've beaten just about everybody in the league, though, or in the division. So right. they'll snap up and jump on you once in a while, but they're just a young, inexperienced team right now. That franchise has had issues for a couple of years now, and they'll snap back. They're just not this year. Now, look at the goals against difference. Yep. Okay, you look at Shreveport, who is the third place team in the South, 118 on the goals against differential. Okay, then you move up to Lone Star, 105, Oklahoma, 104. You've got the 3 best defensive teams on paper, and I think I can sort that goals against. There you go. Look at the South, 1, 2, and 3 for goals against. Yep. Okay, tells you a lot about that division. That's a tough defensive division, and you don't get an inch. So, as much as I want Junie to feel good about himself and have a good pick with the Bruins, I don't see it. because I see, the best 3 defensive teams in the league coming out of the South. And I'm also looking at goals for, goals against. Where is Austin? Oh, they're down here at 8th. Okay. Goals for Oklahoma right there. That's if there's one Achilles heel, now Shreveport's 14th. If there's one Achilles heel for Lone Star this year to make that run, you got to go all the way down to 24th on goals for. Now they've had a big improvement in the second, or the fourth quarter of the season. They had a big improvement. They started pumping up some goals. But man, oh man, Oklahoma sitting on top there. Any way you slice it, they're a controlled defensive team. I like them a lot. But you look at that goals against, and you start looking at defensive hockey. Hard not to look at this winner for the whole national championship coming out of that South.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see. I still think, you don't advance out of the South without leaking oil on the way out, because, it's a war. So, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, whoever advances out of that South is going to have a really good chance to win it. It all depends on how much oil are they leaking once they beat the crap out of each other for 2 rounds when they finally get out of it. So, that's the difference between that division and some of the others too, is just the fact that if you had Oklahoma City in a different division, they'd probably run through round 1 and round 2 and not really get much of a test. Whoever they're going to be matched up against is going to give them everything they can.
So, Mike, explain to everybody how the playoff structure is as far as the amount of games in that first round and that second round.
As far as like the series itself, it's a best of 3.
Individual respective series.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a good gauge on how those series go, having lived it with your son playing.
No, I meant how many games and how does it look structurally on paper, so people know, if they're not familiar with the NAL playoffs, how many games are played in each round for the playoffs.
The best of 3?
I believe it's best of 5 in that first round, isn't it?
Could be. Yeah, because you get you get the 2 games at home and then the 2 on the road, which, one of the things too you got to keep in mind is when these teams match up against each other, what that travel schedule looks like. Because, if like, for instance, the South, if Shreveport and New Mexico matched up against each other, that's some tough travel that you're going to have to play against.
Oh yeah. And whoever gets New Mexico, that's tough travel. So
right.
We go and look at the 22 playoffs and hit submit there.
I know the NA3 is best of 3 because they just went through their first round.
Titans had to play 13 games. I'm pretty sure that it's best of 5 in that first round. We're gonna look like idiots if it's not, but I'm thinking it is. So okay, we got something coming in here. Let's see what the comment is. We'll throw it up here. I thought I would.
You got something zipping across the screen.
It's zigzagging. Oh, we already saw that one. Is it too late for an NA3 player? Is it too late for an NA3 player to be pulled up to the NA for the season?
Well, it would depend on if that player is on the active roster for the NA team to get moved up, because the rosters are set. They had to submit their, the NA is going to submit their rosters. So if that player's name isn't on there, they're not going to be able to move anyone, no matter what league they're coming from.
In other words, the rosters are frozen at this point. And once the rosters are frozen, that's what you go to playoffs with. So I think you're right, Mike. I don't think there's an opportunity there, but
well, it depends on if that player is on an affiliate list for an NA team or not.
Yeah, but I believe if affiliate's different than being on the frozen roster, meaning doesn't an affiliate, don't they have to fall below a certain threshold to be able to?
Well, they'll still have a playoff roster that will freeze too. So right. There could be an affiliate that gets in a game or two, and then next thing you know, he does end up on the playoff roster. But Um, it'll all depend on how that gets put together.
All right, we got another question here. Ooh, look at this.
Is
Danielle,
that higher than New Mexico?
no, I believe this is Colorado, isn't it?
No, I'm saying is 4,600 feet higher elevation than New Mexico.
No, New Mexico is at 38,000 feet. It's tough to play there. It's Mount Everest, like when you get there.
So
No,
this is
no,
higher.
no. New Mexico is higher. I believe New Mexico is at 6,000,
Oh,
so
okay.
a little bit higher. And they're one of the highest points in the area because New Mexico, Albuquerque sits in like a valley area, a big valley area, and there's like mesas up around each of them, and the rink actually sits up on one of these mesas. So when you're at the rink and you walk out in the parking lot, you have one of the most beautiful views of Albuquerque you can possibly get. Just a wonderful view. It's worth going just to kind of see Albuquerque if you've ever seen it before. So, hey, thanks, Danielle. Appreciate it. Coming
That's
in.
awesome.
All right. What do you want to cover next?
Let's I mean, we could go to the NCDC and talk about they
Yeah,
just set all of their different playoff brackets. They
let's
actually have
see.
a play-in game happening right now today.
Yeah, so we need help from the audience here because neither of us knew the answer to this. Does anybody know why the NCDC decided to go with a playoff game? And I'm going to show you the bracketing, and Mike's going to explain this to you because it sure as heck doesn't make much sense to us. But who are we? Let me pull this up for you guys. Boom! There's the Deneen Cup playoff bracket. And let me see if I can make that a little bit easier to read for you. Look at that. I'm getting good at this. Okay, so there's the Deneen Cup. You can see, we've talked about it before. Hitmen are the team to beat this year, sitting over on the right in that bracket. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 in the South Division is the Hitmen, the PAL team. PAL's been hot this year too. Rockets are right there, and the Mercer Chiefs are in the fourth spot there. But look at that left column, and that's the NCDC North. The Cyclones have been a good team all year long. South Shore's had a good year. New Hampshire, but look at this playoff situation. Mike, you actually looked at the standings, and didn't was it the Boston Advantage actually had a better record than New Hampshire?
Yeah, the Boston Advantage finished third and are having to play in a play-in game against Twin City, who actually did finish fourth. But I don't understand why they wouldn't have 4 and 5 play each other. Why Boston? And even when you look at how it's ranked here, Boston is listed as the fifth team. You know what I mean? It's like I don't understand why, if they finish third in the standings, why they're playing against each other. And then the other thing that's a little bit confusing is each division has 7 teams in it. So there's only one play-in game, and it's 2 teams that are coming out of that North Division. So the South they don't even have the opportunity to have a play-in game. I just have no clue. I haven't seen anything. I tried to research it a little bit today. So if anybody out there has kids or, has been a part of the NCDC and this has happened and they understand it, that'd be something that if you could fill us in, we'd be grateful for, because to me, it doesn't really make sense on why they would do that.
I don't understand that either. It doesn't look balanced. It doesn't look proportional. It doesn't look like there's a declining, win schedule that puts people in the right place. Is this a matter of I don't know. Was there a punishment involved, or was there some reason? Was there games that were forfeited? The only way to handle it was, or does one of the teams on the bottom not have enough games on their schedule, and the only way to ensure that they get a fair shake is to give them a play in? Yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear. Oh, we've got somebody coming in, so let's see. Let's see what is said here. This will be interesting. I was told that the Boston Advantage was penalized due to some issues between the USPHL fees that have not been paid. Oh,
Yeah, that'll
okay,
do
so
it.
that might do it. That might do it. So, what we just mentioned was one of the things could have been a team was being punished, and that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
uh, interesting.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kyle. I appreciate that. Now, the interesting thing about this is, um, you know, at least I'm glad to see the league, because this is a non-USA hockey league. I'm glad to see them, taking care of business and keeping their teams in line. I'm not sure that this is the right way, but with that said, at least it's not punishing the kids and taking away their playoff aspirations. The players still get to play, and that's pretty cool. So it's sad to hear that Boston's in arrears or whatever the case may be. Allegedly, that even Kyle's statement was, he had heard that. We're going off of hearsay. So, but I'm glad to hear that. Mike, any predictions on this across the board?
I mean, I think it's going to come down to the Hitmen and the Pale Junior Islanders. Both of those teams are very, very good. They're stacked, as far as like, having top level talent on their team all the way through from the forwards to the D to the goaltending. They're well coached. The nice part for the league is that only one of them is going to be able to advance out from their division. So that'll give whether it's the Cyclones or I know South Shores have had a nice season this year. Somebody else is going to have to try to knock off one of the two of them. But man, they're so deep that I just feel like whoever of the two wins it is advances from that side is going to end up taking it.
Yeah, I predict that this is going to be hard to get past the Hitmen. So much winning tradition. There's so many Deneen Cups under their belt already. Probably I'm just making a guess, but I would imagine that their head coach is probably easily the most tenured coach in the league, from what I can see going through the rosters or going through the bracketing here. I look at it and say this is the Hitmen's to lose.
Yeah.
Pal's a good team. I think that's the championship for that South Division. And then I look over at the North, and I would really like to see South Shore come out of there. I think they've got a nice, tidy little team and a tidy little program, but the Cyclones are good. So it's going to be interesting. That play-in game might give the Cyclones the advantage, that extra game, especially if they got to really battle through that extra game. Hey, an extra game at this time of year, every time you get on the ice, it's taken away from the battery, not adding to your battery power.
Right.
So, you're looking at trying to conserve your team. And if you're smart, you're playing to win a championship. You're not playing. That's why you'll see teams that, you're thinking, well, why are they playing their backup goalie? Because they might have 10 more games. Why are they using their seventh defenseman so much? Because they got to play 10 more games if they're going to win it. One of those things. So I'm looking at this saying this might be a real good run, but I think Northern Cyclones I think they got the advantage just for that reason.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. I think, and again, when you talk about throughout the whole season, the Northern Cyclones have been the best team in that division from the very beginning of the year all the way to the end. So they've separated themselves in that league, just like the Hitmen did that in the South. But the only difference is Pal caught up to them. They're only separated by 1 point with how it finally finished. So that's the only difference between what's happened in the North Division compared to the South Division. So I think the Cyclones make their way through, and then it's going to be a battle between the Hitmen and Pal on who advances out. And honestly, I'm going to pick Pal. I'm going to go with a little bit of an underdog by picking against you because you're always wrong.
Oh, so there's so much for you to learn, Kimosabi. So much for you to learn. All right, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Write all this down because I don't want to have to go back through the tape and find out all the players. Because you know what will happen? If I'm right as much as I think I'll be right, I'm going to cut tape on all this and have it so that every time.
I can't wait. I can't wait because when we did the USHL little preview, all the predictions I listed have all panned out thus far. And when I talked about the Celebrini kid, literally the weekend leading into that, he had 5 goals in 2 games. So he heard me talking about him and said, you know what? I'm going to prove this guy right.
You stated the obvious, though.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's like saying that one guy that plays up for Edmonton's going to score a goal this weekend.
Yeah.
McDonald or McDavid or something.
Yeah.
You know, come on. When you make an easy prediction like that, you can't take big credit for it. You got a little credit for it.
Since it was so easy, I'm so shocked you never made that distinction. You never made that comment before.
I don't go for the low hanging fruit. I'm trying to bring people an insight to this
right.
that they don't get from generic Google searches. You know.
Yeah.
Yes, I called you out. Generic Google search.
Just rewind the tape, Jeff. That's all. Keep rewinding those tapes.
Yeah, although Albuquerque is a few hundred feet less, the outpost does sit at about 6. I thought it was 6,061, and it's very obvious when you get there because you're up overlooking on a cliff where the rink is at, so you're going to be higher than Albuquerque or the. Speaking of that, I had to do some flying out there last year. I took a course on some mountain flying and doing some instrument work in the mountains, and got to fly into these mesas in New Mexico. And if you've never flown into some of these smaller airports, the town is here. And like I was talking about with the rink, there's a mesa up here, and you've got to land looking at a cliff, like a 200-foot cliff coming in all the way. And you're supposed to land right over the edge of it. And if, coming from Western New York, we don't land on cliffs, it's just not what we do. And so it was very, very, very intriguing at first. I can say that you might want to carry 2 or 3 pair of underwear with you the first few times because it's different. Now we have digressed. We need to move on, man.
Let's do it. Let's go into the NA3.
We got 7 minutes to cover the NA3. So let's jump on. You start talking and tap dancing. I'll get the NA3 up.
Perfect. Well, we've had the first round of the playoffs already happen in the NA3. So if we look at the Central Division, actually all of the divisions except for the South, the 1 and the 2 are now facing each other in the second round. In the South Division, it's actually the 2 and the 4. But the Central Division, you've got Rochester, who's kind of an affiliate for the Austin Bruins. They're always a really strong program in the 3HL.
And that's Rochester, Minnesota.
Correct. Rochester, Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay.
They're playing the Oregon, which Oregon is in Wisconsin. It's not in the state of Oregon. Rochester's playing Oregon in that first round or that second round of the Central Division. You're going to have to expand that out more.
I am. Just give me a second.
Now we're getting there.
There we go.
Now we're there. All right, so go up to the top where the Central's at.
Yes, sir.
Or I guess they're not at the top.
No, they start with the Frontier Division.
All right, so the Frontier, again, we're in the second round here. Helena, who's the number 1 team, is facing off against Gillette. So
when does the second round start for the NO?
I believe this coming weekend.
This weekend? Okay.
Yeah. So depending on how long these series went, I know I want to say the Brahmas finished a couple days ago. They went the full 3 games.
So I'm going to put the regular season up because I think you can get more out of. Let's do that by division.
Yeah, definitely.
You can get a better sense. Now let's start with the Central again.
Okay.
And maybe you can talk. What 2 teams moved out of the second round?
Rochester moved on. Oregon moved on.
Okay. And do you remember our picks?
I think we picked Rochester. So not going off on too far of a limb there, but
I called Rochester, Oregon on that one. I remember.
Yeah. I mean, like I said at the very beginning of when I started talking about it, Rochester's affiliated with Austin. They're always a very, very strong NA3 program. They're going to be in it to win it literally every year. It's just a matter of once they advance out of their division, if they've got enough to go all the way. And in some cases they have. So they're still going to be my pick. Oregon has actually been a nice surprise team within this division this year. They've got a pretty heavy group of kids that played either Team Wisconsin or they played for the Janesville Jets. Their coach, Eric Fenton, actually came from the Janesville Jets program. He's done a really nice job, so I don't want to undersell, what his team might be able to do against Rochester, but they're one of the powerhouses. So until somebody can knock them off, they're still going to be my pick within this division.
I think that you're right there. I don't think anybody can make much of an argument for that. That's a good program, and I think you've made a point on that. Let's look at the East.
Yeah, the East, again, 1 versus 2. They both advanced out. So you got the Northeast Generals playing against Danbury. And, one of the things that I did mention when we did this preview is some of the teams that do have that direct affiliation with a North American League team are going to end up having the advantage because you're going to get some of that trickle down from the North American League that comes down to play for that 3HL team. Because rosters are going to end up getting set and you have to cut down. So there's guys that have been up in the NA all year that end up moving down for the playoffs. And this is a prime example with Northeast.
This is a prime example of a stacked roster.
Right.
I mean, 41-4 during the season. And, look at the goals against, 241 goals for, 80 against. They're on a 21-game winning streak. Come on. I mean, the only thing they can do is beat themselves. I mean, if they don't win this whole thing, it's because for some reason they beat themselves.
Yep. So again, that's going to be the pick to advance out of there. I don't really see them getting knocked off stride yet.
Yep. I fully agree with you. All right, let's look at the Frontier Division. 8 teams. Who moved on?
Helena and Gillette have both moved on. So 1 versus 2. This was a really good series throughout the year when they played against each other, just kind of slugging it out back and forth. I think when we did the preview show, I picked Gillette to advance out. I'm still going to stick with that. I just think that they have a little bit of a Minnesota connection with some of the players they recruited over to that team. And I just like how they play just a little bit better because there's just more offense in their game. And I think you picked Helena because of the goals against factor that they have. They're both older teams. They're kind of 0-2 heavy, 0-3 heavy.
Yep.
So, they're kind of even when it comes to like how they're going to play against each other. So I'm interested to see how this shakes out, but I'm going to stick with Gillette.
Okay. I'm going to stick with Helena on this. I think if there's a team, if we go back up and look at Northeast Generals, if there's a team that can knock them off, it's going to be one of these 2 teams, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But now we get down to that South, and maybe we're wrong on all accounts. Who moved out of here?
So now this is the only one that kind of had an upset. So the Texas Brahmas are going to be playing against New Mexico. And again, you're talking about 2 programs that have North American League teams. So there is a little bit of that trickle down where you get a couple NA guys that, give both of these teams a little bit of a shot in the arm. This is going to be a tough battle. I know the Brahmas actually lost a player to injury that's now going to be out for the season, Joey Crowley. He's a piece that's might be tough to replace. And they did make some additions throughout the trade deadline, and the team's a little bit different now than it was throughout the year, which has helped them kind of get over the hump. But New Mexico is no joke. I mean, they took down the Roadrunners, who, are a very balanced team. They got good offense. They've got a good team, and they came in there and ended up bumping them off. So again, this is going to be another slugfest coming out of the South. And I'll let you pick the winner, but I think our guys might do well in this one.
Yeah, money's on the Brahmas, but we're really up against the clock, so we're going to jump onto the West here.
And then again, we're back to 1 versus 2. So Granite City advanced, Alexandria advanced. I'm a big fan of Granite City. They have played really well consistently throughout the year. I've seen Alexandria play a few times. I saw them play in the showcase. I like how they play. If there's an upset to be had, I think Alexandria can beat Granite City. they're a little bit of an older team also, which helps. I think I picked Alexandria in our pregame show, but I'm gonna flip. I'm gonna go Granite City advances out on this one.
Interesting on that. I am going to, regardless of what I picked in the first round, I'm going to take Alexandria just because you gave up on them and I need some hope. So I'm going to pull for Alexandria on this one. But it'll be a good series. And you're right. I've watched these teams too. I think that this is going to match up well. I think that's going to be a good series. So, look, we got one question to answer, and then we're going to jump off. We've got a question that popped up a little bit earlier, which was how many NCDC players move up to the NAL? I think we've covered that numerous times over the last 6 months. It's well over 100 players will move up, but it's not a question of looking at that number. We can quickly. This is just a real quick summary on this. The way to look at that is not so much how many players move up; it's how many players stick once they move up, because the number is actually fairly large on the number of players that get a chance to play in the North American Hockey League, but the number that actually stick. And I guess Mike, we should answer this completely, because if we don't, it'll just stick there. So here's the easiest way to do it, and I'll do this quickly. Mike, you want to add anything while I'm pulling up the elite prospects?
Yeah, I don't know how many players move up, but there is a large amount that will move up, and there's some that have already moved up here. Like as the teams were getting their final roster set for playoffs in the North, or in the North American League, some players that were playing in the NCDC have moved on and moved on to the NA. We have a kid that we brought in that was playing for Connecticut that has been a nice piece that we've added. There's been other teams that have done the same thing. So this is a period of time where some kids have already moved over. Then once we get to the NCDC ends, there's going to be kids that'll be tendered, so they'll get opportunities going into next year. You'll see a lot of players from the NCDC that'll get drafted in June or July, I should say, or it is June when our draft is. So how many is that? There's probably a good 40 or so kids that are going to get that opportunity.
Yeah, so the number is 158 players from the NCDC suited up in the NAL this year. And what Mike's point, and that's not including the goalies. You got even though it says 11, it's not 11, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 goalies were on rosters but never saw the ice. So you got a handful of goalies. You got 158 players. Now, Mike's point was that players move up and they move down. So they might have started out the year in the NAL and then moved to the NCDC. They would count as a player that was in the NAL that has NCDC experience. But the list I'm pulling up right now is showing what you have across the board. This is all players with NAL that are on NAL teams right now that have NCDC experience. I want to hit this game played button, because once you sort through the game played, and I think we're around 50, 51 games total, and then you sort down and look at the breaking point, you'll see a breaking point here right around 60, 65 players, I'd say, that were truly full-time players. And I'm not picking on any players, but I'm just going to pull one up just to show you. If I pull up the 71st player here and you look at him, he is not in the league right now. He's playing in the USPHL Premier, and that's the case with a lot of players. They got 10 or 20 games in, and then they move down. So that cutoff point is somewhere between 50 and 65 players that truly moved up and stayed in the league. And you can see on the top of the roster, and once again, names aren't that important on this, so I'm not trying to show that. But your best player, the best production coming out of the NCDC is a 24-point player. Okay, well, I take that back. I did that wrong. I got to hit this button. Gibbons, wow, really good. 51 points. That's not bad. That's a point a game. So the drop off, though, once you get down into out of the top 15, top 10, is production that's more on they're not above the average on you get down to 10 or 15. My only point is quality players come out of the NCD 10 or 15 total, maybe 50 to 65. Yeah, that's about average for every year. Those statistics are pretty good. So my only point is, even though there's 158, you look at the bottom of this list, and let's go back and let's sort it by games played again. Let's just do it purely on games played, and then we sort down to the bottom of the list, and you'll see the bottom of the list is last page. Now these are the guys that either got a test. See, there's zeros, ones, twos. So 158 through 100, maybe around there, 110. 48 guys, even 5 or 6 games isn't a lot. You're looking at 50, 60 guys that got a taste, but they didn't end up in the league. And that's about normal. Mike, anything on that?
Well, I mean, there's some studs that come out of the NCDC that go into the North American League and do very well. They're usually a little bit of a younger player, again, uncommitted, that transfer over and play in the null and then end up getting their college commitment and whatnot. So, it definitely is there's a little bit of a ladder of development that happens when you got good players in the NCDC that aren't committed. They do come over to the NA.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put the league down, Mike. I'm just saying, statistically, it's the number that stick is a lot lower when somebody first looks at that and says, "Oh, there's 158 now." There's 30 teams in the null next year, and rosters at 23. Hang on a second here. I got to take my shoe off, and then I got to carry the 2, and then put the other shoe on the right foot. So 30 teams times 23. If my math's right, that's 700 players. So at first, blush, you're saying, 158 out of 700. That's 25% of the league. No, that's you got to just be careful on the statistics on this, because yes, there's always going to be a few good players that come out of that league, but the number of real contributing players is nowhere near 158. It's absolutely, we're talking less than 50, in my opinion, of strong players coming out of that league, and they should come out of that league. That should be a place. So anyway.
Yeah, I think another way of going about to see how many players advance out is you can go into the elite prospects, go to the drafts, look at the 2002 draft or 2022 draft, and see how many kids were drafted in the rounds that came from the NCDC, and then see, did they stick or did they end up back in the NCDC? And you could do that over the 2021 draft. And, again, just kind of see how many kids are getting that opportunity, because there is definitely a development path there that we utilize with our program, but a lot of other ones do as well.
And if you want to go back and look at the last 8 years, which I have, and you want to look at those numbers, you can see that the amount of participation from that league has increased drastically with the null. The null does recruit out of that league stronger than it ever has. So that's good. That's extremely good.
Yep.
That means that players are moving up. Now, the argument is that the null and the NCDC both look at themselves as being tier 2, and there's a big argument that that's not really the case. Anyway, Mike, we've really got to run. We got to get off here. Any final thoughts or any closing remarks from you?
No, I'm off to the hockey rink myself now, so maybe I'll see some people here that listen to the show. That's been fun to bump into some people lately.
That's great. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you get a chance, go over to our Facebook page and Junior Hockey Live on the YouTube, that thing called the YouTube. You can get on there and you can like and subscribe to Junior Hockey Live there. Also, Junior Hockey Advisor has all the videos. We got a few hundred videos up there. Sure would like to see your support there too, with a like and a subscribe on our YouTube page. Have a great night. We'll see you next Monday on Junior Hockey Advisor. Ask Me Anything, and that'll be Monday night. Take care, everybody.
See you later.